Nice to meet you all. My name is Marguerite Hutchinson. I am a lawyer by training. That's what I say when I introduce myself. But I work in business development and corporate strategy for biotech firms. And over the years, this has meant different types of roles within biotech companies in the Bay Area, and now in England. Where I'm responsible for various different functions. It has ranged, of course, from legal affairs and IP to business development, meaning looking for partnerships with pharma companies and investors. It has meant alliance management, which means managing relationships with pharma companies when we have a collaboration, and that can be very positive, and it can also be very contentious. So that leads to all kinds of, the full range of interactions. I have also been in charge of operations and finance, everything from building a new lab space for scientists to, updating accounting systems and bookkeeping procedures. And so this industry, I think, has allowed me to exercise a lot of different skills and skill sets and learn a lot along the way in the support of scientists and the science that they are doing, making sure that their lives are easy so they don't have to worry about administrative or business, the business aspects of science and cancer research and coming up with new therapies. More background, I grew up in Fresno, California, which is an agricultural city in the middle of the state. Most people aren't very familiar with it, but I think that was a good place to start out in the world because you are always aware of, the large city to the north, which is San Francisco, the large city to the south, which is Los Angeles. And so you have a broad awareness of what is outside of your immediate environment. You have to, because living in a place that's not deemed to be culturally relevant makes you look outside. And so I think that has helped me over the years to constantly be looking beyond my immediate circumstances. I then moved to the East Coast and went to college, ultimately graduated from Harvard with a bachelor's degree in government, political science, and spent several years between law school, undergraduate and law school. I spent a year as a teacher in an elementary school, and I spent 2 years as a paralegal in several very large law firms in Boston before moving back to California, to San Diego to pursue my JD at the University of San Diego. And after graduation, I graduated in 2009, which was in the middle of a terrible economic crisis. And I can talk about that later and how that affected my classmates because there may be echoes of that happening right about now. I hope not. I moved to San Francisco in search of a job. I had no job, but I found one, and that was a fun, interesting story in itself. I ended up working at UCSF, which is a medical science university within the University of California, in their tech transfer office. So I'll leave it there, and then maybe Trevor, if you want to pick up with some questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a great background and introduction, and great experiences from Harvard to San Diego and working in Boston. And with all your science background, it really all led to where you're at right now. And we'll get into that. But you kind of mentioned kind of the difficulties of finding a job right after law school. And we could
Yeah,
start with a category of questions about law school itself.
sure.
And I guess, what was the most important thing from law school that you kind of learned that you wanted to bring into your practice, either in business or as a lawyer? Is there something that you wish you had learned in law school that was a little different once you got out there?
Um, I think I wish when I came out of law school and started studying for the bar, what was immediately apparent to me was that this is important for any law students listening, that law school does not prepare you for the bar. It's a totally different set of information for the most part, and it is a totally different set of questions and style of studying. So I think that was one of the things that I wasn't prepared for, to be honest, and was very sort of frustrating period of life for me. Um, so I would keep that in mind that when you come out, and I know you're all preparing now to begin, or some of you are still in 2L or even 1L, and just be prepared that when you start studying for the bar, it's going to be very different from what you were doing in law school.
Mhm.
Um,
Are any things that
in
you
terms of
found most helpful?
the
If
other
the
thing
hardest
that is
part?
so important, and I don't know, maybe if you read the New York Times, there's a great article by David Brooks today about the fact that Americans are losing the ability to read, write, and reason, and that's leading to all kinds of catastrophes in our world. And I think that what I learned in law school was one, the importance of knowing how to write persuasively. I would say, above anything else, that has led to my success in whatever form outside of law school is the ability to write persuasively and cogently, and also to know what is the headline issue, what is the headline point that you're trying to get across, and always being able to organize your thoughts so that you're starting with your conclusion. I tell my scientists all the time, lead with your conclusions. You need to be telling us what the message is, and I think that is something that came out of law school, which has been extremely useful in real life.
That's really good advice. I think that Chloe and I we see that in our writing essays and legal analysis that it's important to lead with your conclusion and make a strong headliner for your reader to understand and use the flow of your writing. So that's really nice to hear. Um,
Well, just be aware that everyone you meet who didn't go to law school is completely unfamiliar with that concept.
yeah,
And so you'll have leg up in any kind of pursuit because you can organize your thoughts and think critically, which is missing even in other advanced degree programs. It's missing.
that's very good to know. Is there something that you found the most difficult from your transition from law school to working? I know you mentioned the bar, how you wish law school kind of better prepared you for that, but was there something that was most difficult into the business and career world?
Yeah, I mean, there were many things. One, there's a lot of repetition when you start working. So you're doing the same thing over and over again. And I know this from many different, I knew this going into it because I had spent a few years as a paralegal. And when I was a paralegal, it was in a corporate and securities practice in big law firms. So mostly venture capital fund formations and things like that. And the work is just, rote. It becomes rote, right? And, and then when you come out of law school, it's exciting because you're reading and doing different things all the time. Then you go back into work, and in my case, I was reading and negotiating contracts all the time. And when I had like 50 or 60 contracts to negotiate at once, I had this huge queue, and you're just redlining all the time. One, it's very exhausting. Two, frustrating. Three, um, can get boring. But on the other hand, then you become really good at it. So I would say the hard part is the 10,000 hours that you just have to keep toiling away until you become more expert.
Got
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a period of time. I mean, you have to expect that the first 3 to 4 years out of law school, it's going to be toiling.
yeah, that's really good to know. And that's something I feel like I would enjoy redlining and negotiating, reading contracts, but until you really get into the several hours of actually doing it, it's hard to say that
Yeah.
you'll enjoy it when you get there in practice.
I think in my case, this is something you might run into once you start practicing, but I'll introduce the concept now. In my case, I was negotiating from other people's paper, which means that I was receiving lots and lots of different contracts from lots and lots of different people. And so it wasn't just like my template that I was sending out and people were marking up and sending back to me, which in that way you can get very familiar with it. When you're receiving other people's paper, you have to learn the whole organization of the document anew every time. And so it is hard work.
Yeah, that makes it just that much harder when you're not familiar with it and it's not something that you create and build yourself. So that
Yeah.
is definitely hard work. What advice would you give a law student that's interested, kind of coming out of school to pursue this kind of work, either in-house or transactional, contractual work?
Um, so do you mean being like an in-house counsel or?
Sure, I guess. So you started out as doing contracts and serving companies like that, and then you kind of moved into working in-house and kind of overseeing a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
Is there something that you found most
Mhm.
helpful for a student that wants to
Yeah.
kind of take that path of working and understanding contracts at first, and then maybe transitioning to in-house later on?
You have to commit to doing everything.
Uh-huh.
Ev- Anything that comes up, everything that comes up, you have to contribute. And so that means that work-life balance is not a priority. That means that you may let your boundaries slip in terms of what belongs to me versus what belongs to them. Um, but if you want to showcase that you have sort of multifaceted skills, that you can operate in different realms, that you can really understand the business, not the law, but the business of the company that you're working for or the industry, um, that requires doing anything, everything. Nothing illegal, of course, but it means taking on projects that are maybe out of your scope, volunteering for anything that needs to be done, travel to some distant location for some very inconsequential meeting, right? or consequential meeting, or staying late and working on some other project, doing other people's work, filling in for other people. Unfortunately, you have to do all of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's kind of our segue into kind of your career experience and tips. Kind of how you just laid it out right there. You kind of showed us what a typical day kind of looks like, and the answer is there really isn't a typical day, I guess.
Yeah.
As being working
Exciting.
in the house.
Yeah. In a typical day, I mean, I could tell you the typical day when I was doing just contracts negotiation.
Uh-huh.
It was you'd arrive, you'd stare at the computer, you'd redline all day, you'd answer emails. You might have a phone call with some counterparty and discuss a topic and try to work through the language. You'd send persuasive emails back and forth with counterparties, and you'd keep redlining and go home. But once I made the jump into a company, then it became much more about what are you doing for the business? And the contract negotiation was second. One, you're working on your own paper, so it's very easy to review and make changes. You don't have to think as much when you're using your own paper. It's just much more automatic in terms of what you can accept and what you can't accept, and then it's over. It's easier to find more junior people or assistants to do those red lines for you, and then it's sitting in on meetings and giving advice about how to strategically align yourself towards some kind of plan, whatever the plan is. Should we move in this direction? Should we move in that direction? Would it be okay for us to do this kind of collaboration? I mean, you're just constantly advising people on lots and lots of different topics. And so it's very varied, like I mentioned, um, whether it's dealing with some HR issue, um, you know, dealing with some kind of facilities change that requires getting insurance. Um, it's just varied from day to day. No
Right.
day is the same.
Gotcha. So the common legal issues you might see kind of differentiate every day, where maybe it's HR one day, you have an insurance issue the next, some other employments, and then contracts when you have something that needs to get done. So it kind of changes throughout the probably the year
Yeah.
how the company operates.
Yeah, again, it's more about the business, allowing the business to function. And I would say one of the hardest things about d- moving from being a lawyer and legal advisor to being more of a business development person, meaning thinking about what the business can do, what directions can the business go in. You have to shift your mindset from thinking about risk and telling your colleagues like, oh no, we can't do that because so and so might sue us, or it's too risky from X, Y, and Z perspective, to a more conscientious risk taking perspective where you say, okay, I know we could get sued if we do that, but the chances of getting sued are very unlikely. So the benefits outweigh that. So let's proceed. And so that was one of the most significant shifts that I ever had to make in my mindset in doing this work, which was again moving from a legal to more of a business and corporate strategy mindset. Um, Thinking about opportunity instead of thinking about risk and liability.
That's good to know. That's something where I guess my next question was going to be, what's something that most people don't really know about working in house, and it's shifting your mindset to being more open to business developments and opportunities than always thinking about the risks and potential harm that is down the road.
Exactly. Like, one thing that's really great about law school is that you read so many cases, so you can imagine all the potential scenarios that might come out of a particular action. But then, someone has to be willing to say, okay, well, I live with that risk and I'm going to take the action because the upside is worth it. And so becoming that person when you're in-house saying, okay, you present the risks to the team, but you say, we can move forward because here's how we can mitigate it. The chances of this coming back to bite us are low. And being an advocate for taking risk is, I mean, as a general counsel, you may not want to say that you're an advocate for taking risk. But if you are making a transition to being on the business side, that's something that you need to accept, is that you're taking risk, and it's an educated risk.
And so, how do you approach maybe um, your fellow executives and business leaders with this advice? Do you kind of just outline kind of the several different risks and then the potential op business opportunities that could align with what the business's um, trajectory is, and kind of just lay it out in terms that the rest of the team can understand, where it's just not all of the legal advice that you initially come up with?
Yeah, you don't want to get into the weeds too much on the the legalese, but you want to say, here are the high level risks. If we say, we have four different compound structures that we could choose as our lead candidate, for a cancer target. And this one has some freedom to operate issues. This one has no freedom to operate issues. You would say, obviously, we want to do everything we can to try to move in the direction of having complete freedom to operate. What are the risks of doing that? Well, what if the compound isn't as potent or whatever? Then you would say, okay, maybe there's some freedom to operate issues on the first one and it potentially is best in class. Um, let's analyze the freedom to operate issues in more depth. What are the chances that this is going to become a problem for us at commercial stage, where we could face a patent infringement lawsuit or something else? I'm sorry, there's some background noise over here, but um, these are the things that you lay out for your team in trying to decide which path to take.
Yeah. What skills and qualities do you believe are essential for success in a position like yours and being an in-house counsel? Is it just being well-rounded in several different areas and understanding the business aspects, like you mentioned?
I think, like I said before, reading, writing, reasoning, those are three really critical skill sets. Most people that you'll encounter wherever you go who are not lawyers, they really struggle with the critical thinking part in particular. And so when you are able to parse through the logic of proposed decisions, that will be very helpful for your team in analyzing what the next best step is and whether all of the premises and the hypothesis behind a particular theory or action are really well justified. Um, so that's one thing. Two, I think you have to be likable. Sometimes I feel like I struggle with that. um, you know, you're always going to be one of the more serious people in the room because you have a JD, right? And so people are going to listen to what you have to say, and they are going to not like you because you are a lawyer, and you have to be able to live with that and say, okay, 50% of the room, is probably making a lawyer joke in their mind right now while I'm speaking, but I'm going to continue saying what I think, just so that I've gone on the record as having warned them, but then also come up with some way of working with people so they want to work with you and they want to seek your advice.
Yeah,
Um, what else? Yeah, like I said, learning the business. That is one of the key things. And that means the ins and outs. So, I mentioned earlier I have a bachelor's degree in government, political science. I haven't taken a biology class since the ninth grade. I haven't taken chemistry since 10th grade. But I live in this world where I'm constantly involved in scientific theory making, and talking about chemistry concepts in great detail often. And that's stuff that I've been learning on the job. Um, so, whatever industry it is, whether it's construction or if it's movies, TV, entertainment, whatever it is, get deep into the actual substance of the work that's not the law.
that's great advice. So I was going to ask, how did you know you wanted to be in the field that you're currently in now? Is that you kind of said something you just kind of learned on the job? It was science, something that you always wanted to be?
I've always loved science,
Uh-huh.
always. I've been passionate about science since I was young, and for whatever reason, I didn't pursue it. Maybe I just didn't have the hard skills to do that when I was, in high school or college making decisions about that. But I've always gravitated towards scientists in my life, in my social life, and I didn't know that this is what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to move to the Bay Area and work in tech because I had lots of friends who worked in tech. So I figured I'd probably be working in AI or something like that back in 2010, that I'd find some job in a, Web 2.0 type of business. But it turned out that I landed in biotech and started learning on the job. And I was reading, like, okay, I'm negotiating some kind of contract and we're talking about experiment. Yeah, I had to educate myself. And then I totally love this field. It's so much fun. I go to lots of scientific conferences. I come up with my own scientific theories, that might actually work. I don't know. I tell scientists what to work on. I tell them what experiments to do. It's fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great to see how full circle it all comes around. You mentioned AI, and that's something I know a lot of students are interested in today. How do you see the technology field changing the legal positions and maybe your role as in-house counsel?
Yeah, come to think of it, I mean, everything I was talking about sitting there and redlining all day, I mean, this is going to be so much easier. It's going to be so much faster.
Mhm.
Not going to need to do the hard drafting from scratch, um, because it'll be suggested for you. So that's exciting, but you need to be conscientious of the fact that some of these patterns of words and thinking and logic and construction of general frameworks within the contracts may not become so integrated into your, I don't know, memory the way that it does when you do that practice for so long.
Yeah.
So I think from contract drafting and negotiating, that's going to be pretty obvious. You'll just be reviewing and making minor changes in the future. It's exciting. Same with legal research. You'll be reviewing, and confirming rather than digging it up yourself and doing all the hard reading, and contextualizing. Um, Probably the same with due diligence.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's something that we all kind of see, kind of reading and confirming is a different strategy than trying to go out and find the answers on your own. So that's
Yeah.
something that a lot of students are transitioning to and trying to find that balance.
No, I think that's good. I mean, when I was in law school, and I had to like, if I had to write a brief or something, I would usually do, this was almost 20 years ago. I would usually just call the Westlaw hotline and have those experts do the research for me and then just send it to me rather than do it myself because I was like, I can't be bothered to learn how to do this searching. Let's just let the experts do it. So
Yeah.
now it's even easier.
Yeah, it is. Now you could just type it out and ask for the authority in different legal areas, and it does a pretty good job at identifying different cases. So
Yeah.
it is getting pretty easy. So it's a good tool to have.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's great. Hopefully it gets you out of the doldrums of just repetitive work over and over again.
It does help, absolutely. We got about 5 minutes left, and I just wanted to end off on a question that I find super interesting is kind of the international aspect of working for um, a company that's based in the UK. How do you find what challenges and differences do you enjoy and see with a company overseas while you work in San Francisco?
Yeah, it's wild. One of the companies I worked at for a long time, when I was chief operating officer and general counsel, I was actually a subsidiary of a Japanese company, and so I had was in the regular practice of interacting with Japan as the corporate parent, which had its own kinds of challenges. Now I've got the UK. Our company has a research center in Cambridge. It's a spin out of the university there, and then we have 3 employees in the Bay Area. We all work at home, which I hate, by the way. I you guys, if you have the opportunity to go into the office every day, do it. Don't worry about flexibility and freedom and all that other stuff that ultimately is not going to serve you. Just go into the office every day and interact with people. But anyway, right now, that's what I do. I work from home, wake up pretty early in the morning to start and meet them for 6 a.m. meetings, sometimes earlier, sometimes a little later. And then I go there for a week, a month, and sit there on campus with them and try to get them to see the possibility of the potential of our work. Um, Unfortunately, the US has just such a dynamic view of a business. Like anything is possible. You can put in all your time. Like I told you before, you have to do everything. In the UK, they tell me things like, you couldn't pay me enough to work more than 8 hours a day. And they really value their family life. They really value their hobbies. Um, and they don't accomplish as much.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, that's that's the case. And so I go there with my boss and we try to get them excited. We try to get them to learn American, you know, sort of vim and vigor. Um, and it works a little bit, but um, I really love going there. I love the people. They're so nice. They're really smart. Um, the politics are minimal. I mean, I can tell you the politics in the Bay Area companies, you know, as a counterpoint, it's insane and intense and crazy, and unhealthy and toxic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So trade-off.
Yeah, that's really cool to see kind of the different culture aspect of the employees and kind of what their values are and trying to
Yeah.
merge that and balance both sides of point of view. So that's a really cool
But
experience
from
you get for a company like that.
yeah, but I would say just to answer the question for the legal audience, there's not that much difference from what I've noticed. You know, the systems are the same. It's a common law system, and so I haven't come across too many things that are different there in the UK versus the US. The Japan is totally different. I'm going to Japan on Sunday. You know, we're creating a new company there, and their legal system is totally different. I mean, they don't have the concept of attorney-client privilege. Something to keep in mind if you're ever doing business there. There's no attorney-client privilege. And there are other things that just don't carry over between the US and Japan to be aware of. But you just have to be conscientious that um, what the most important thing I think to be conscientious of in the US is chaos compared to these other countries. The other countries, Japan, the UK, many others, very ordered, very polite, very, you know, still observing social norms in a way that the US has lost. And so when they visit you, you have to be aware that our system is chaos. Like they are, it's intimidating. And when we go there, we have to kind of conform. And I realize I have to have like princess manners when I'm in the UK. And so you just have to be aware that our tolerance for um, diversity is just different across these different cultures.